Hi everyone, welcome back to Dr. Pai's Astrology channel. Today we have with us very lovely Kṣaṇāti and Sam Geppi. Namaste and welcome.
Thank you, and namaste, and welcome to you, Kṣaṇāti.
Namaste, Navjeet Ji and Sadhasiva Ji. So good to be here with you both.
So today I'm very excited to introduce a topic which Sam and Kṣaṇāti are going to be talking about is the 3 tips on relationship astrology. What to look for when you're looking in both charts and what is their more alignment according to the planets. So I'm excited.
Great.
Perfect.
So over to you guys.
So Kṣaṇāti, do you want to start or you want me to?
Take the reins, brother. You be the leadoff hitter here.
Okay. So now that Venus is in Libra, and we have this like opening because Venus has been in some difficult placements here, going through Cancer and Leo and Virgo, where she's debilitated, enjoying Ketu. So as we're recording this in end of September, she's in Libra, so it's good to be thinking about our relationships. We thought it would be good to do this. So we're just going to share tips. The first one that I'm looking at is, and it's really just based on years of doing readings. I've been doing a couple hundred readings a year for more than 20 years. A lot of them are relationships. They're relationship based. And even when they're not, I'm looking at a person's capacity as a man or a woman, their masculine, feminine energy. So both masculine, feminine in general within each person, and the masculine feminine flow in a relationship. Because really relationships still come down to those simple principles, masculine, feminine. There's the sun and the moon, there's Mars, Venus. These are like paired opposites. So within each individual, you'd like to see that a man has a healthy relationship with his masculine, that he feels like he's masculine and empowered, and that the woman is empowered to receive through her feminine. These are the archetypes of masculine and feminine, and that the relationship is going to reflect that. So first you look in the individual's chart and see the woman's feminine planets. Are the feminine planets Moon and Venus in feminine signs? Are the man's masculine planets, which would be Sun, Mars, and Jupiter, in masculine signs, or some combination therein? You would like to see that each man at least has one masculine planet and a masculine sign. The woman has a feminine planet and a feminine sign. That means they're going to at least have the capacity to assert themselves in a healthy way with the man and be receptive in a healthy way for the female, right? Then you look in the relationship they're in and see if there's a healthy masculine feminine flow within that partnership. And one of the easiest ways to see that is a thing called Sri Dirg, which shows that the man's moon is in the initiating role to the woman's moon. So, for example, a man's moon would be, like, for example, I have my moon in Libra, right? So, as being in the man, being the man in the relationship, any woman who has the moon in Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and also Aries, which is the opposition, that would be a healthy masculine feminine flow, because that means my moon, the shortest distance from the moons is from my moon to hers. If it's on the other side, then the shortest distance is from her moon to mine. So all you ladies, I'm sorry if your moon is Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, we're not going to have good Sri Dirg. No, that means that the masculine feminine flow is reversed, and then the woman would be in the masculine role, and that puts the man in the feminine role, which is just kind of like the gears kind of grinding to a halt. So the first thing I notice is that masculine feminine flow, and to see if it's healthy, to see if it's flowing. It's no one thing is a deal breaker, but it's the most important thing I look at first to see is that masculine feminine flow. Is that circuit there? By the way, it's straight from the Vedic text. It's in Kala Prakashika and Muhurta Chintamani and whatnot. It's called Sri Dirg. It's right in the Vedic Kuta scores. It's one of the kutas. Very important principle and literal thing. So the principle of masculine feminine is going to be huge, but then the first way to see it literally and easily is whose moon is in the initiating role. Right? Mm-hmm. And then you can look at the other things too, the ascendants and the other planets, but first that moon. So that's my first thing that I notice. The first tip also in that is if you're having frustration in your relationships overall in general, this is probably one of the reasons, because masculine and feminine flow might be backwards. So ladies, you're want to be empowered to be in the receptive role, which doesn't mean you're getting dominated. And men, you need to be in that initiating role. So what do you think, Kṣaṇāti and Nav?
I love it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, me too.
I
Thank
really
you.
love the insight into, the paradigm between masculine and feminine energy, and as men and women, regardless of how we identify, under finding that balance of masculine and feminine energy in that partner dynamic. So I really think that's a profound and an important thing to look for, Sadasiva Ji. So thank you so much. So my first tip, so I first of all, yes, Venus going into Libra, its root position here is a very exciting time. I think this is a fun topic for anyone. As Sam mentioned, how often am I doing consultations for a couple married, wanting to get married, trying to work through challenges in their relationships. And so understanding the intricacies of synastry or compatibility is such an important aspect of Jyotish, especially from a therapeutic perspective. I mean, I often, with my clients, it's not always a question of if you should be together, but like, what can you do to like have the most harmonious type of relationship? A lot of times I already have couples that are married and they're going through certain challenges. And by understanding different aspects of their chart, they can really have a more harmonious experience with each other. The most important thing, or not most important thing, but the first thing I look at for a client when working with Synastry is understanding the type of relationship that each individual or that both individuals are desiring, because I think that sometimes we get romance or love just kind of wrong. You know what I mean? Even personally, you know what I mean? Like my experience is that what society says is the purpose of a romantic relationship is not actually what a romantic relationship is necessarily all about, although it can be that way. But I think sometimes what we're looking for in terms of romantic relationship is pleasure, is happiness, is satisfaction, is feeling seen by someone, is feeling nourished and, taken care of, and we're taking care of someone. And that's one form of romantic relationship. But if that's what you're looking for, that's what you need to look for. And this is what I call a convenience type relationship. There's nothing wrong with the convenience type relationship. And a lot of people, they can have long lasting relationships. And, in a convenience type relationship, you're looking for charts that are actually somewhat more similar. You know what I mean? And there's naturally more friendly interactions between, a Venus and a Mars, or friendly planetary relationships, even between Saturn and the North Node or K2 and the South Node. Like these type of interactions between friendly planets, which are generally the more sattvic planets having a nice interaction with the nice sattvic planet, or tamasic or krura graha, a more cruel or tamasic planet having a nice interaction with a cruel or tamasic planet in a partner's chart. This makes for like a comfortable relationship in which two people are kind of they're able to kind of relax, and they're at the same stage in life. You know what I mean? Their lessons are similar, so therefore it's like, lunch, dinner, relaxing. It's more of a comfortable energy. If two people's weaknesses are the same, it actually bodes well for the comfort of the relationship, because not one person is going to be pushing each other in any direction towards growth. We're both going to sit in our craft, and we're going to enjoy sitting in our craft together. So again, that's one form of romantic compatibility, which if that's what you're looking for similar planets, whether sattvic planets exchanging with other sattvic planets, and the more kind, benefic grahas exchanging with favorable benefic grahas, or Jupiter Mars exchange, Sun Moon exchange, Rahu exchanging with a person's Rahu, K2, similar nodal positions. I mean, this can be very beneficial for a comfortable relationship. Now, where I think that the second form of relationship, I won't necessarily say it's greater, but it's more evolutionary. And this is where two people actually want to grow in their life, right? They want to evolve. And they're going to do this by actually one person in the relationship being at a more evolved manifestation of a specific lesson than their partner. And when this happens, one partner is actually helping another person grow in one area, and that other person who is hopefully evolved in more other aspects of the life can help a partner evolve and to grow. So the best kind of relationship or the most magnetic glue is actually opposing qualities. You know what I mean? Where someone's Rahu aspects someone else's Ketu and they're opposite each other. Listen, it's not going to be happy. It's not wake up and have coffee and pancakes every day kind of relationship. But this is the kind of relationship that really encourages growth in the individual. Sometimes I look for planets actually in a synastry between two people in the Upachaya positions, you know, 3, 6, 10. I also look Dusthana Baba, 8, 12. These aspects helping each other manifest deep growth lessons through each other people. Now, again, in order for even these counterbalancing relationships to exist, we still need some glue where there's some kind of favorable exchange between planetary friends versus planetary enemies. But so because there needs to be a certain level of comfort in a relationship to be able to get through the growth together, right? When you marry someone, you take them through good times and you take them through bad times, and there needs to be enough good times to get through the bad times together. Um, and again, you know, Sam mentioned it as well, which is like the masculine and balanced feminine energy, the balance between the masculine and feminine energies. And I always like to think of this: is there a subservient aspect in the chart, and is there more of like a commanding position in the chart? Because essentially, two people which are more kind of subservient, they can relax and enjoy each other. But there can be this often dynamic between someone who is more challenging, which is more authoritarian, and subservient. And so this balance can also, the question is, do you want two subservient people? That's going to be more like a convenient relationship. You know, when someone is in a position where two people are actually alphas, two people are authoritarian, this is the most growth. Yes, you can butt heads. Yes, it can be difficult, but this incurs the most growth. So again, this is just a brief introduction into, but I think the ultimate question here is like, what type of relationship is the individual seeking? They really need to ask themselves that. So I hope that was interesting.
So does it mean like whenever the nodes are involved with your main planets, like the growth? Usually I have observed that with Ketu. So if Ketu is like either, I mean, that's my observation, like with sun or like very or moon. I see a lot because I've had interactions with people where they're like it wasn't easy, but there was a lot of growth for me in those connections.
Exactly, 100% now. I feel like with the nodes, and I'd love to hear Sam using the nodes in his synastry analysis of how he looks at it too. But it's like usually where those nodes are having malefic interactions with their partner's chart, it's not enjoyable. But like you said,
Yeah.
it causes or it can act like you know, an initiator for profound transformation and change within that individual. And that lends to a deeper question too, which is like, just because we're in a relationship with someone, does that mean it's supposed to last? Not necessarily, because sometimes people comes in our lives just to teach us lessons, even if it's temporarily.
Yeah, and so all of it is this. Everything is the specifics. The nodes, there are two of them, so it depends on which node, and it depends on what planet or what. It doesn't have to be a planet. You could be in the ascendant, or you know, also. So any K2 connection through synastry is going to have a K2 influence, which is different than Rahu. K2 is going to, if someone has a K2 influence on one of your natal planets, then that thing in you will feel scrutinized. The K2 is this perfectionism kind of scrutiny, which is going to be, which will make that planet in you, let's say that it's, let's say that's Mercury. Someone's K2 is on your Mercury, then you're going to feel their kind of criticism and scrutiny of your words or language or something like that. It'll feel sharp and sort of critical. If it's their Rahu on your Mercury, then it's going to feel stimulating or exciting, or kind of it'll compel a Rahu energy, which is a kind of, again, overuse and type of thing. But of course, even the idea that all relationships aren't supposed to last forever, none of them are. None of them last forever. And marriage even. Relationships are dynamic things. And even let's say that people get married and they stay together for 50 years, okay, but the people are going to change within that as well. Even the two individuals aren't static. Everything is growth. So there's never a question in my mind that I don't even approach it from like, so are we going to be here forever? So here is astrology telling you how to like fix something or make something last forever. That's never been my perspective anyway. My perspective is to explain what the dynamic is. And within that dynamic, we're living our karma. And of course, within that, you can say, here's the things that you could do to improve this area. Here's where your synastry is clashing. Here's where your masculine feminine dynamic is off, which, by the way, to me, that's really the framework of everything else. Every interaction you're going to have, especially if it's a male female in a romantic relationship, especially, that's the basis of the connection flowing in a way that feels good to both people. That's always the foundation. In others, it's not. Then they're more fluid. But these are universal principles, not just romantic ones, but friends, business agreements, and whatnot. So that's what I would say there. And honestly, if I can I'll just do my second one here, since instead of the dead space waiting, it actually plays into what my second thing is when I'm looking at a relationship, doing relationship reading. First, I'm looking at the connection between the two people and just what it is, right? Masculine, feminine flow, and I'm looking at the synastry, like the buttons that are getting pushed. One person's Jupiter is on the other person's Rahu, or you look for Venus connections, the moon connections. You want to see some gentle ones, but there's also often some difficult buttons that get pushed through synastry, because that's what we're there to do as well, is to work through those things. But then I look at the timing, because the timing is everything. You can have great connection with someone and just be in different dasha cycles where it just doesn't work out, where someone is running the dasha of something that is not interested in a relationship at this point. Let's say someone just came out of a 20-year Venus dasha and they just started the sun. They're usually not looking to have a relationship at that time. They're looking to assert their individuality, because the sun comes after Venus. Venus is 20 years of trying to make agreements. Then the sun comes and just kind of burns that up for 6 years and says, okay, I just did this for 20 years. I just learned how to accommodate and make agreements. Now it's about me and my individuality, and the sun person is probably not going to be disposed at that moment to really want to be having a relationship. Maybe if it's an Aquarius ascendant, that's their seventh lord. So maybe, but all I'm saying is you have to be looking at, there's a thing, timing is everything. It's a generic term. It really works in astrology, because it doesn't matter if people have good synastry and they have good connection and all of that stuff, that's all still going to be there. But that doesn't mean that in their life, one or both want to be having a relationship. And this is what you can often see. One person is in the dasha of, oh yeah, I want to do this. And the other one is in the dasha of, now it's all about me and my work and my duties. And this can create stress and tension, is that people aren't in the same timing. And by the way, again, I'm just going to say this, within a relationship, if it's an established relationship, this is what happens all the time, is partners will change. If you're with someone for 10, 15, 20 years, people have changed dasha cycles many times, not even just the Mahadasha. We change every year or two within the subcycle, because that's the main thing that's pushing our karma, is the secondary level, not the primary level. Particularly in those long dashas, Saturn, Mercury, Rahu, Jupiter, Venus, which are, 15, 17 years or so. That subdasha lasts for a couple years. And when that changes, our partner suddenly changes for a couple years. There's a different priority. And so, not to mention a big Mahadasha shift. The Mahadasha shifts, especially if they're moving from, like, let's say Ketu to Venus, or a short one to a long one, or even a big long one, Jupiter, like Rahu to Jupiter, and huge shifts are coming, then we'll see a partner's whole orientation change, right? If we're in a relationship. But I will also come back to the fact that if that masculine feminine flow is intact and all that other stuff is there intact, then relationships can survive that stuff, because it still feels good to be giving and receiving to that person. Within the context of that dasha cycle changing, if there's a harmonious interaction, then the people can survive it and thrive in it, and then the relationship can accommodate that change. And by the way, this is also when you see relationships break, is when dasha cycles change. And someone was trying to get along with something for a while, and then the dasha cycle changes, and that thing that wasn't working, that they were trying to work with, is no longer tolerable, and they don't have the structure, the harmonious, relationship flow, the masculine feminine flow, the positive synastry, to be able to survive that shift. This is what makes relationships change. Dashas change, or subdashas change. So that timing is everything, not to mention trying to meet a new person, for example, which is the same kind of thing. When you're meeting a new person, you'd be like, oh, we get along so well, but one of them is here, one of them is there. So that's my second thing, is within the context of masculine and feminine flow, timing is everything.
Yeah, very important point. Yeah, timing.
And again, it's illuminating and explaining to them what's happening. And you say, here's why things are different now. Here's the nature of your relationship. Here's why, 3 months ago, he started doing this, or she started acting like this, or making this priority. It's very clear to see. By the way, that also includes big transit changes in the sky and whatnot. Saturn moves in somewhere or whatever. But the dasha cycle is the foundation of the individual's karmas, not just the environmental shifts that come from the transits.
Perfect. I mean, my second tip is not that distant from Sadasiva G's. It's also the appropriate karma palam, which is the ripening of karma. And when we're looking at Jyotish, we're looking at the ripening of karma primarily using dasha, and as well as using gochar, or the transit, secondarily. As Sadasiva mentioned, like within a few months of my Mercury Mahadasha, which is the beginning of 2023, that's when I started to know I was going to get a divorce. I asked for it within 9 months of my new dasha. So, I mean, very appropriate that, for Saturn dasha, that served its purpose then. And now with the Mercury dasha, feeling more autonomous and independently focused. I think that the perfect example, just to kind of piggyback, since my tip is similar to Sam's here, is like, I had a client, and I think we live in a world too, right? I always bring the philosophical therapeutic, where it's like instant gratification, you know what I mean, in terms of romance, which is like, okay, I want a romantic partner like yesterday, so I'm going to keep swiping on Bumble or Tinder or whatever until I like see the person that I like. And then hopefully they show up at my house later tonight. Like, that's just the world that we live in, is like instant gratification based off of superficial observations. And what Bumble and Match.com and Tinder don't take to effect is dasha. And they really should. I really think that they should kind of create a fusion between a Jyotish app and a dating app, because what you really have to determine is the appropriate ripening of karma, as Sam talked about, between two different charts. You know what I mean? So again, the dasha, and I'll go into this more into my third tip, but it's like, is the dasha of one person, how is that interacting with the dasha of the other person? And that's like goes to something we've also talked about, which is that the nature of romantic relationship is not in its indefinite duration. Like the nature of human consciousness is attachment. You know what I mean? We all have the same guru, Amma. Like she teaches us that the nature of the human condition is like our attachment. You know what I mean? And that true awakening is the relinquishment of that attachment. So then how come when we're in a romantic relationship do we expect it to last forever? Then when it comes time to let it go, we lose all our grace and we're asking for this much amount of money from our romantic partner and we're fighting over custody of the child and we get into this huge mess. You know what I mean? It's not uh within spiritual teachings. It's like, oh yeah, spiritual teachings are great when the dasha and the transits are appropriate, but as soon as they're not, like, let's start fighting and warring with each other like there's no tomorrow. Um, so I really look for a sync between the two dashas and even the bhuktis, like even the antar dasha, you know what I mean? Like sometimes when I look at the mahadasha between two people, like that might sync up, but then the antardasha isn't in sync, and a relationship is also an ebb and flow. We have good periods and we have bad periods. You know what I mean? So even though the mahadasha might be good, you know, congeniality and glue to keep the relationship together, maybe there are periods where it's like things are intimate and romantic and sexually are going well, and then you know a Ketu comes in for one native and the other one's in a Mercury period and it's in an Artabhava and it's like, okay, well, this person wants to go live in an ashram and this other person, you know, they want to like work full time and advance in their career. So it's actually like also the dasha can show like, even though it's okay to still be together, like maybe you should go in your own directions for a little bit, you know what I mean? And try to hold each other in the light without being attached of like I need this person in this moment to cook me dinner. You know what I mean? Like chill out with all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like allow people to stand in their own light and just kind of find their own journey as is appropriate for their dasha. And then I also like had a client too, which is like, okay, like I really want a relationship and like how come I don't have a relationship right now? And like I'm longing for that so bad and everyone has someone else and they're noticing that there's that longing. Usually that longing for the romantic partner is like strongly activated in the chart. But like, you know, God teaches us through delayed gratification. And so if that longing is really strong in there, that delayed gratification could be satiated at another time of life. So you have to look for the transit of these things coming in. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm just getting a little feedback.
Yeah, and just to say, just to bring this up as well, that we keep talking about relationships. They're not spiritual. They're there. If you're talking about the four Purusharthas, they're Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Kama is what our agreements are related to, and relationships are part of Kama, which is desire. There's the third house, which is our personal desire, the thing I want for me. There's the seventh house, the thing I want from you as an individual. And again, this is what relationships, they're based on our personal, the desire we have with you. I want to fulfill my desire with you. And that means through you and with your agreement. But again, this is what sexuality is. That's what sex is. It's not my gratification. It's my gratification with you. I want you to give it to me, with me, and us to do it. Now, again, that leads to a higher vibration of kama, which is desire, which first is pleasure I can experience pleasure on my own without another person in the form of food and other things. That's third house. Seventh house is the pleasure I can experience with another person. But pleasure is the key. That's the hook, not the love. Love is dharma, not kama. Love is like the love of a guru, the love of a child. Dharma, self-love. First, fifth, and ninth house is dharma, which is pure love, like the love we have for a child, love we have for a guru. That's not relationship. And that's not cynical. It's just Purusharthas. If we're going to talk about them, they're based on kama, which is the desire, not only that I want to fulfill with you, but that only I can fulfill with you. Because I can give myself pleasure, but I can't give myself that happiness that comes when it gets magnified with another person. So we have an agreement that we have. And by the way, it's not just with romantic partners. We're in a seventh house karma relationship right now. I could sit here and talk about this stuff, but we all decided, because we like each other, we know each other, hey, let's magnify our happiness, our enjoyment of the subject by making an agreement and coming on a call and talking about it with each other. Okay, that's also seventh house. Any relationship with adults, with consenting adults, to magnify their happiness and joy, and they enter into an agreement with it, it's the same function. It's the seventh house. The seventh house is all agreements with adults, not a boss and an employee, a parent and a child, a guru and a this, but equals. We're all equals, and it's based on mutual respect. So that's the nature of relationships as well, and that's why they're so delicate, and that's why those foundational principles, particularly a romantic one where now you're bringing in our whole identity as a man and a woman, and they're very combustible on that level, but all agreements flow through the seventh house. And by the way, that's why I look at them that way even when I'm doing consultations. My clients have all this charge around it. In some ways, my job is to not have as much charge around it and to just kind of see it like, here's the agreement. And your part of the agreement changed when this dasha changed, or when this transit, when Saturn went into your, seventh house. Okay, now all of a sudden, blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to look at it objectively and not with the charge they have. But there's love, and love, it's like, well, also, it's really not love. You want something, they want something. And it's love until it's not. It's love for you until they stop giving you respect. And then it's the opposite of what you're calling love. So it's not like the love you have for your children or your pets or your guru. That's pure love. That's the devotion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect segue into my third tip, which is the Purusharthas as it relates to compatibility. I mean, we're all...
Go ahead and do it.
Our minds are all melting together here, which I love that. You know what I mean? That's exactly what I want.
I knew you were coming in because we had that discussion before, so I'm teeing you up for your Purusharthas. Go ahead and present that.
Okay, here we go. Bases are loaded. So, I think it's important to understand here, first of all, before the Purusharthas as it relates to compatibility, there's always something where it's like there's an element of medical compatibility, because there's an old sutra by Charak, who is one of the founders of Ayurveda. It's Dhammartha Kama Mokshanam Arogya Mula Mutamam Rogas Tasyaha Paraha Shreyasho Jiva Tasya Cha. The purpose of all human beings is to achieve the Vedic four aims of life. This is impossible without balance of the doshas. So the essential energy here is that on some level, before we can even look at two people, are they supporting each other, achieving the four aims of life, which is ideally something that in all our relationships, right? I mean, Sadasiva has supported my Arthabhava by supporting and empowering me in my journey into astrology since when I first got into it in 2012 or 2013. Sam has been in my corner. You know what I mean? In all of our relationships, Nav as well, like Dr. Pai, like, it's all about, in our relationship, like, what aim of life is that individual supporting in our relationship with them? And that needs to be in sync. Ideally, the exchange between the Purusharthas between two individuals is reciprocal. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, Sam's been supporting me my whole life. Well, now I'm the host of the Parashara conference, and I couldn't imagine having it without him. It's like, it's this constant exchange of reciprocal support in any relationships. And that's why in romantic relationships, it can be confusing and it could get complicated. Because as Sadasiva mentioned, karma is the essential nature with which we are perceiving the romantic relationship, but not necessarily is that compatible between two people. I mean, sometimes the nature of relationship, and I think this is why divorce is as common as it is in our modern day and world, is that the nature of relationship is also can be to offer us moksha. Sometimes the two synastries between two people's charts is way more moksha exchanges going on between 4, 8, 12, especially 8 and 12. You know what I mean? And when these exchanges are going on, which is indication that, like, whether you want to admit it or not, like, divorce is a part of this picture. You know what I mean? And coming to terms with that energy is actually empowering you to be able to serve what you're there to do for each other, which is to bring you closer to God, to bring you closer to non-attachment. I mean, like, even in, like, all over the world, sometimes our romantic relationships are business relationships. You know what I mean? Jay-Z and Beyonce, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, you know, like, celebrities marry each other all the time, musicians marry each other all the time, because guess what? Well, now we're like this power couple, and it's going to help it, you know, empower our, you know, reputations and our popularity, and it's going to help our careers. And it's like, it sounds like, you know, weird, but, like, who are we to judge either? You know what I mean? Like, that is the nature, that their relationships are helping each other, supporting them. Now, karma, one thing I wanted to mention in terms of karma exchanges, which I think is one of the higher elements of karma too. And there's an aspect of dharma here, but some of us desire to have children. And while it's dharma to be a parent, you know what I mean? And it's within our dharma to be that parent, that comic aspect of, like, sometimes two people, and you can see this through different aspects of the chart, are meant to come in to bring a child into this world. People think that because they're meant to bring a child into this world, and that's part of their karmic synastry, that means that they should stay together forever. And, like, that's a huge fallacy. Like, just because two people are meant to bring children into this world, maybe they should bring the children in and then get divorced and co-parent. And this is something you see in this modern day in society too. Yes, like, the impact of divorce can have a negative effect on a child, but, like, it doesn't have to. I mean, there's all sorts of aspects of psychology which are dedicated to co-parenting today. You know what I mean? I think that, you know, so again, I'd love to hear Sam's intake on this, but I just want to say that it's like, okay, well, even to get to understanding the four aims of life, we need to be balanced within our spirit, with our body, mind, diet, and we have to have some elemental balance so that we can properly be the energy that we're supposed to be, so that we can have some kind of synastry interaction. If we're connected to our true self, the question is, well, what aim of life, or is there an interaction between us? And ideally, I think that when in any interaction or synastry, romantic, professional, spiritual, like, there needs to be an exchange in the Purusharthas between two individuals. So I hope that, thanks for setting me up.
Nav, I'd like to hear if you have anything to say. Nav, you've been in a successful marriage and all that too. I haven't heard, and I'd love to hear your sharing here instead of just us guys talking. If you wanted to share something.
Actually, I don't have much to share, but I've learned a lot from both of you today on the relationship aspect of through astrology. And it was a different perspective for me because I've never heard of this. So, like, big one was the dashas. And just when somebody has that knowledge of understanding of the chart, then it's easier for them to accept as well, I feel. You know what I mean? Whatever we talked about. Because if someone had no knowledge about astrology and they're going through that, they would be traumatized or, like, attaching to the person very tightly. But when you have this understanding of higher, like, you through your charts, then it's easier and it's more accepting.
Yeah, and that's what, and obviously when you do readings, nobody has any. They understand astrology, but they don't really know what it is. They don't understand they're going through dashas, and the reason it makes it real for them is because you explain it correctly. They don't tell you, you tell them. This is why this happened. This started happening at this time, right? This is when you started feeling this thing, right? And they're like, yeah, how did you know? Well, because I'm doing astrology, because I know what it is. And I know what that planet is that usually it's the second level dasha that started, which made you now start to look at this part of your nature and your life. Whereas before you were maybe trying to accommodate this thing, now you're not anymore. So this is the change you're going through. And it always, relative to this issue, I never tell a person this is why you should leave your husband, you should break up, you should this. I never tell people what they should do. I let them know this is the change that's happened. This is the change that's happened. If it's really difficult, then here's what it's going to take for you to, like, work through this thing, because you and he don't have a harmonious masculine feminine energy. You feel like you're in the masculine and he feels like he's in the feminine. There are things to do about that if you want to keep trying, and you just went into this cycle here, which means this, so it means your relationship is going to have to accommodate that, blah, blah. I let them know what it would be, etc. So yeah, they don't have those awarenesses. I'll just say this about Kṣaṇāti, and then I'll wrap up with my final thing. But what Kṣaṇāti was talking about, particularly with, you'll see power couples and whatnot, one of the reasons why you have the power couples is because they're at the same level. And one of the things that happens when we have a healthy relationship with other people is we don't want power imbalances. For example, this is why the archetype of relationships is that Libra energy, where we want things to be fair. We want things to be equal. We don't want some person to be the king and the other person to be the beggar. So if you're someone like Beyonce or whatever the husband's name is, I don't remember their names. You don't want to be the king and if you have a healthy relationship with your relationships, you don't want to be the one on the throne to the person who's like, oh, you're so famous, da 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 da. It's not fun. It's fun when you're, very immature and you don't have any self-esteem or self-worth and you want praise. But once you become a boss, you want to be met as a boss. That's where your peer group is. And so this is why you'll see people will be at the level that they want to be at. And that's going to be a healthy relationship. We just saw with, what's his name, Diddy, and all the problems he had, because look at all the power imbalances in his relationships. It's just simply a power imbalance. Aside from all the salacious stuff, he wanted to be the king. He had the wherewithal to be the king, and in this power imbalance, to be surrounded by whatever all of that is. But you see other people, when they have a healthy relationship, they're going to want to have a relationship with an equal. And who's going to be the equal to someone like that is going to be someone like that, who is also at that level. And then once they come together, they don't talk about business and all that stuff. They're not fascinated with all that. In fact, then the relationship becomes a thing. It's like a vacation. It's a way to sort of get away from all that stuff. They find sanctuary in each other. Now you see this like with athletes, with other people. They find this thing that they love that they can bond through. But I'm sure when they hang out together, they're not talking shop or whatever. In fact, this is a person who also doesn't want to talk shop at that time. They also want to hang out with someone. So this is really what makes relationships work, I would say, even is just that friendliness. And Amma says it all the time, that men and women in relationships should be like best friends. And again, best friends are tolerant of the other person. One person isn't on some pedestal, and we need to get out of our fantasy projections that there's some soulmate fantasy kind of thing, right? Again, talking about karma and dharma, we could come together to have kids. Kids are dharma, relationships are karma. And the relationship is going to work because of that mutual respect that the people have. And because I want to talk about the last thing just real quick here, and that is Saturn. One of the things I've noticed in my years of doing so many readings is you'll see that relationships that also have a Saturn component, you don't want it to be too strong, like one person's Saturn on the other person's, let's say, it can still be a strong glue, but Saturn moon can feel heavy, like if it's direct through Synastry or something like that, but it's still going to be a lot of glue. You'll see that, and what it means is that the person will take each other, they will take each other seriously. Many times the relationships that we have with another person that last a long time are going to have Saturn influences, because that's what Saturn is. Where instead of just thinking this is a fly-by-night thing, when there's a Saturn component, the people will take each other seriously. Often it's good to have aspects through Synastry. One person's Saturn is opposite other planets. Sometimes the conjunctions also are just fine. It depends on what they are. But again, those Saturn components are really important. And it shows where, in general, in the fixed Synastry, which is the two natal charts, not the dynamic things like dashas and whatnot, but when you have the fixed Synastry, there's often Saturn connections through Synastry there, because that means that people will take the other seriously and make a commitment to staying together and trying to work through things. This is why, in some ways, say what we want to about Saturn, he's the one who's got directional strength in the 7th house, because we're supposed to be careful and then make a commitment. And by the time we find the person, we have realistic expectations. We're not expecting them to be our savior, and we're willing to get in there and be humbled by the partnership and work on it, and not just, oh, this is too hard, bye. Nothing wrong with that, but when there's Saturn connections, often that doesn't happen. We can feel that person's Saturn there. Many times, for example, Saturn, like the woman's Saturn on the man's sun, or aspecting the man's sun or ascendant, these are really quite good. And the man's Saturn and the woman's moon or Venus or ascendant, especially through aspects through synastry, can really show a seriousness and a commitment to the other person.
I love that, Sam. I think Saturn is so important in synastry too. I mean, you can see people's essential integrity. And I feel like, that ability to carry a certain level of austerity and seriousness into the nature of why you're in a relationship and how you're supporting each other is so important. And I think whatever exchanges you're seeing with Saturn in a person's chart, it's creating a lot of glue in understanding the nature of the relationship. So thank you for discussing that as well, Kṣaṇāti.
He's exalted in Libra, by the way. One of the reasons. It shows that commitment. It's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I feel like being married to an astrologer, that really helps. That helps in the relationship too. You know what I mean? They can probably see your Krishnas and the chart and, not take what I say so seriously in the moment, maybe.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Because it does help a lot, right? When you see Mercury retrograde, or if somebody even have a little bit of knowledge, just looking at the chart, you can just go through and just check it out, okay, why it's really happening. And you just don't take it personally. I think that makes a huge difference too.
Indeed.
Yeah. So everybody should learn astrology, especially about relationships, so they can really decode the chart. I mean, so powerful this knowledge is,
Yeah, it definitely shows a deeper awareness that's operating, and understanding the principles too of it all still comes down to Sankhya philosophy as well. Masculine and feminine energy is foundational. Purusharthas, it's really just foundational, but it's more dynamic and more subtle because you have two things that are attempting to harmonize with each other. So it just doubles the potential complexity.
I just think it's so funny sometimes because it's on any dating app or whatever, it's well, I'm a Sagittarius and you're a Pisces. And it's so dumbed down. You know what I mean? That we're actually in total illusion as to the actual astrology and how it's affecting our compatibility. I think that it's so important, understanding that if this is something that's important to you, maybe not looking at a horoscope, you know what I mean? Between, oh, well, is this sign compatible with this sign? If anything, that all of us discussing this has been clear to anyone who's watching this video, is it's so unique to the interaction of one chart interacting with another chart that you can't make generalities just based on sign and planet. I mean, you have to take into effect of the whole puzzle that's going on together, and really try to, yes, we can understand these tips. These tips are great to integrate into our lives, but it's a very complex web. You know what I mean? So even for me, I'll speak from my personal experience. I've been married twice, divorced twice. When I was looking at my compatibility between both of my ex-wives, I was looking through rose-colored glasses, and I was looking just to try to find all the things that were compatible between the two of us. When I went to my astrology teacher and shared those charts with him after the marriage, he started telling me the issues. So it's one of those things too, well, even if you're self-knowledge of astrology, it's really good to get an objective opinion on these things. I can tell you from personal experience.
I wonder what the Sri Dirg was. right off the bat, that's always the first thing for me, like the moon.
Yeah.
That's always the first thing I look at. Because I've generally found that if that masculine feminine flow is harmonious, the couple can survive most things because it feels good relating and it's hard to find. This is that thing where you just feel good around the other person as a man or as a woman, and it's very hard to find. And when we do find that, where we feel good around that other person, just as a man, you feel good around this particular woman because it's so hard to find that harmonious male female flow that when we find it, we this is the kind of thing where we know it's hard and we feel like, okay, well, at least, and often when that's there, the couple will really try and they'll work hard and they can, survive a lot, especially if it's not just affirmed by the moon, but if almost all the energy or a lot of the energy is flowing from the man to the woman, then again, it just feels good. Even when you go through problems, the woman reflects back to the man. The woman, very easily receives his energy and then reflects it back, which feels good to him. And it's harmonious. When that's not there, it's almost like nothing is there. Then why try to do anything? So.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Samji and Kṣaṇāti. This was really cool session. I'm really excited. Thank you for coming and showing up and just really sharing your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. Nice to see you again, Nav and Kṣaṇāti.
Thank you, Navjeet Ji. Such a pleasure to be here with you. And Sadasiva, I have so much respect for you, man. It's so nice hanging out with you and doing this collaborative work.
Thank you.
Thank you.